You're going through hard times, perhaps there's this business you invested in, or there's a goal you failed to hit, there's a deadline you missed, and you're currently contemplating on whether to give up or not, then this video is for you. What you're feeling currently is pain. Pain. And pain can be segmented into two: physical pain and emotional pain. You see, I've come to conclude that life is very objective. Life is at the mercy of your interpretation. So you see that the circumstance in and of itself is not what causes pain, but the interpretation we associate. You and I can look at the flag, one might feel disgusted, the other patriotic. So the same object of focus, but different perception. And if we were to act based on what we see or based on what we feel, our results will be vastly apart. So you see, the problem is not the situation. The problem is how we interpret the happenings surrounding our life. So physical pain is self-explanatory. Physical pain has to do with bodily harm. You break a leg or you get into a fight, you somehow harm your body. In summary, in fact, that's a very good summary. It has to do with bodily harm. On the other hand, emotional pain. This is an experience we have on a daily basis. In fact, this is what has prevented many of you from achieving success. What you feel, the happenings. Remember, the foundation of tonight's discourse is every single thing is at the mercy of your interpretation. So the emotional pain you feel is something that rises as a consequence of your understanding. So if you look at the logical extreme, if an athlete comes first, nobody needs to motivate him or hype him up in order to feel dopamine, the excitement of coming first. Nobody has to trickle that feeling in his ear. It's something that comes as a byproduct of the situation. So you see, most of these things we emit are unconscious. If something bad happens, you feel a certain way. If something good happens, you feel a certain way. So the point I'm trying to highlight is you can inverse it in and of itself and force your being to feel a certain emotion regardless of what happens. If there's something I understand about life is every negative situation you experience comes to teach you something. If you look at the operation of God, it makes you become captive of what you would later become a deliverer of. Look at the story of Joseph, for instance, a prime minister. To become a prime minister, he had to be held in captive. So the pain, in fact, that's not an accurate example. An accurate example would be those healing ministers. If you listen to anyone with the healing anointing, it's most likely some guy who was bedridden, who had all kinds of problem in his family. And you see, when they dispense that gift, you can literally feel the compassion. From a Western standpoint, the motivational speakers, these are men who have been through hell. In fact, your results in any sphere is what gives you authority to address matters. If a fat guy comes along and tries to give you fitness advice, would you listen? Exactly. So the problem is not in the accuracy of his teaching. It can be 100% legit. The problem is that there's something in your mind that differs to professionals. On your wedding day, who do you want in your face? Someone who has been doing it for 10 years or a guy who just graduated beauty school? Exactly. You don't want to take a chance with your makeup with someone who just graduated. And now notice something very interesting. We didn't discuss ethnicity, we didn't discuss race, we didn't discuss character. So you now see all of this are excuses to enhance incompetence. But that's not what we are discussing today. We're explicitly talking about pain and how to use it to your advantage. Every time you experience something negative, be able to detach yourself from the emotion and look at what is trying to teach you instead. You see, if most of you thoughts like this, discipline, motivation, all of those fall to the wayside because you get excited at every single bad thing that happens. You see, at the infancy of my career, I would sit on the floor to understand how the markets work, learn about the economy, the cause and effect. You see, I was so curious. If people lose money in the stock market, where does it go? Millions of dollars are being lost on a daily basis. Yes, fluctuation happens, and I'm not trying to discuss that extreme. I'm talking about people losing millions of dollars either in trading, valuation, or in some kind of bulk trade. Where does all this money go to? Who profits? Because I understood perfectly from a very young age that money is currency. Currency is current. And if you can position yourself in the middle, you get wet. Finance is relative. There are people today who their charges, what they spend as charges, or what they spend as, how do I put it so you understand what I'm talking about? Expendable fees is life changing money to you. So there are people, in order to execute a trade, they're getting charged 50 to $70,000. Now, from a global standpoint, it might not be as much as I'm trying to put it, but from an individual standpoint, 70 grand is a lot of money for a lot of people, and literally that figure can determine the next phase of your life. Please understand, as little as 70 grand sounds, it can literally be the bridge between someone's tomorrow and today. Literally, there are people who spend that on a lunch table, on a dinner table. There are people who spend that in a hotel room. There are people who spend it carelessly. What I'm trying to say is finance is relative. What is going on here? Finance is relative. It's relative. Well, let's get back to the subject of discussion, which is pain. Pain. The reason you are not successful today is your degree of pain tolerance. You see, everything that happens prepares us for the next season. If you want to be successful, in fact, this is a very interesting point. The moment you decided to be successful, your life became difficult. Why is that the case? All of the experience is trying to create an atmosphere to what you will experience in the future. So a trader who loses $1,000 and doesn't become depressed, doesn't spiral, still goes to the gym, keeps his concentration demand, and he doesn't lose his mind over this amount. Very soon, he's going to become successful. Why? Not necessarily because he's the best trader or he has the best strategy, but his mind is zen. Along the way, that same person would lose 100 grand, $1 million, and would maintain that same posture. So most of you would approach it from a nominal standpoint, that if someone loses $1,000 relative to 100 grand, the emotion is somehow different. I guarantee you, It's not, because what $1,000 is to that person is what 100 grand is to the other guy. So it's still the same emotion they're feeling, but different amounts. Do you understand? So if you maximize the season of losing the $1,000 and the dynamics of how to remain sane, then the future would not be a problem. Your pain tolerance is relative to your success. I recall one time at the infancy of our career when we started the company. So first 4 6 months, no clients, no clients, and even worse, our site got hacked, and the landlord, because of the poor structure of Nigeria, the landlord wanted an advance of a rent that's still 6 months away. He threatened to evict, and there were so many problems. Staffs were offering their resignation letter, and even the ones that remained, you could see it in their eyes that they're looking for better opportunities. So I was in the middle of an implosion. Had it been not for previous experiences of failure, where I sat down on the floor to learn how the market works, the various ridicule at the time, and something similar where I almost lost everything. But that degree of persistence is what came to play in the future. So literally, when I say how you do the small things is how you do the big things, you can feel the energy because I have results in that sphere, which gives me authority to address this matter. So your pain tolerance is always going to determine your success. As I packed up the company, said everybody should go home, this was a waste of time, etc., would I be successful? Exactly. Also, irregardless of what I try, when I approach that deadlock, I would give up. So you see that your results is capped, not necessarily by the devil or some mythical spirit. It's a consequence of your pain tolerance. I want you to observe your life, and you will see that there are certain things that you call this is the height of it. And once you begin getting that semblance of experience, you stop. You stop. Unfortunately, this has become your ceiling. It's equivalent to the proverbial elephant. From a child, he was tied to a nail. And after struggling to move past certain lines and it didn't work, he grew up and still operated within that paradigm. Now, although this elephant has the strength of 20 to 30 men, although this elephant has the strength to pull up a tree, he can't break free from a nail. The point I'm trying to highlight is once you fail in a certain aspect, or once you're unable to cross certain levels, you begin to engage in self sabotage. Aside the fact that you stop, let's say this is the line where you always stop. When you get here, you have created all kinds of stories that prevent you from going to the other side. And even if you try to mechanically force yourself, you would notice either you get up late, you don't keep the consecration demands associated to that goal, you try every way possible. When it's time to engage in that stuff that moves you to the next level, excuses spring up. It's time to smoke, or suddenly the apartment needs cleaning, or that dish you never use somehow needs to be washed, or you need to see someone. You deliberately check your phone to see text that will distract you from that experience. So the problem is not necessarily the line. The problem is the various stories you've come up to prevent you from crossing the line. And why you come up with those stories is something unique that the brain does to prevent you from feeling negative experience. So life is cause and effect. The problem is not trying, or the solution is not trying to mechanically go over the line. The solution is to correct the mindset associated with that experience. So previously, the brain has observed that anytime you fail, you go into this, you spiral into depression. You do not do work, you sleep, you cry your eyes out. So the brain, in all of its wisdom, will try and prevent that experience as much as possible. So you notice you do not engage in those actions that moves to the next level. Not necessarily because you're tired or you're incompetent, but the brain compels behaviors to take actions that produces the outcome. I've explained countlessly, you operate subconsciously. The philosophies you hold today, the assumptions about your life, is your reality. And some of you might think your reality imposed that philosophy. It's actually not the case. It's your assumptions that impose the reality, not the other way around. That's why, for instance, if you visualize yourself as wealthy, which is a common experience, I'm using this because it's relatable. You visualize yourself as wealthy, you would notice it still compels you to take poor behaviors. And it's not necessarily because the absence of finances, but you are so used to a lifestyle that once you tell yourself, I'm wealthy, you are met with so much internal resistance. In fact, all hell breaks loose to ensure you conform back to the previous ideal. I'm wealthy. And all of a sudden, some bill comes up, and there are a lot of things to refute that statement. And you notice immediately you go back to the previous mindset. Everywhere seems calm. You go back to dealing with the daily struggles of the mindset. But once you try and break out or go to the next level, the pressure intensifies. So you see, in order to cross that line, it's not to mechanically force yourself, but to change the paradigm, and it will compel behaviors to take actions that moves you the other way. You see, the reason I'm so competent and successful and able to operate in any given situation is because of this mindset. I have a quality mindset that irregardless of what experience I undergo, as long as I do not stop, it's only a matter of time before you become successful. In fact, this is a very interesting point, and this is something you can fact check yourself. When we give this example, it's not necessarily because that's the worst thing that has happened to us. No, this is something you can look at now and verify whether I'm lying or not. Let's take this channel for instance. Over 1,000 videos. Unknowingly to you, I created 800 and something videos. I think it was close to 900. 800 and something videos before we could become profitable in any regard. 800 and something videos. And please understand, I don't mean in a sporadic manner whenever I feel like, I mean consistently, back to back, pouring out your heart, faced with all kinds of limitations from an equipment standpoint. I shared the story when I used to record in those days. And after pouring out my heart, is either the microphone is turned off, low quality, or I go behind and it's not recording. PTSD. I can't help it. PTSD. But either I go behind only to discover I've been wasting my time. I've been motivating the air, the flies, and the mosquitoes around, which prevented them from not biting me. Prevented them from biting me, by the way. So good job, mosquitoes. But the point I'm trying to highlight, in fact, currently, there's this guy who's supposed to install my solar. The light here is not stable. We've not had light for some time. I know it's mind blowing. How can I exist in this situation? And there are a lot of limitations associated with this lifestyle. For instance, I can't access my laptop. There are a lot of transactions that are pending. If not for the relationship I have established, and there's this guy who can give me, let's say, 50 to 60 million naira credit. If there's any transaction I want to proceed, I just use from that line. And in the last video I talked about, I mentioned integrity. That 50 to 60 million naira line would be non-existent if I was not a man of my word. If I said I'm going to give you XYZ on Friday, if it doesn't come out, I'll rob a bank. Simple. That's how dogged my mindset is. If I say I'm going to give you XYZ by Friday, if it doesn't come out, I would rob a bank. So I'm a man of my word. I was able to get 50 to 60 million naira credits. That's how I operate my transactions now. And inshallah, either they fix this light or when I travel to my desired destination, once I wrap up here, I refund him. Even better, I give him some kind of interest as an incentive for the help. And this is the problem with most of you peasants. You do not have real world skill. You're not competent enough to instill psychology in your daily operations. For instance, you use your friend's car, return it back in a condition better, in a better condition. Take it to some premium car wash where they record vacuuming the seats and using toothbrush for precision. Send him the video. He might react. But I guarantee you, if you request for the keys, yes, sir. You don't borrow someone's car, post it online, ride it dirty, bring it back with all kinds of scratches and hope because of the ties or the quality of your relationship he would lend it again. No, it's not possible because humans operate on psychology, and if you keep hurting someone unconsciously, he will cut you off. Remember what I shared. The mind compels behaviors to produce an outcome. So if unconsciously he's receptive to the idea, you're a careless person, you don't care about his vehicle, you brought it back in bad condition, and as a consequence of your usage, he had to spend thousands of dollars in all kinds of restoration. Do you think anybody in his logical mind would lend you that car? At best, if he's not blunt, he comes up with all kinds of excuses to prevent your usage. You've lost access. In similar situation, most of you would, when you arrive or when you have access to your laptop, just send in the 60 million or whatever credit you've exhausted. But the smart thing to do, in addition to the reimbursement, either you give some kind of interest or you present a gift or a text message of gratitude appreciating the young man for his efforts. You see, people are very easy, and in this world of stupidity, some form of gratitude or honor is seen as poor or being poverty or having a poverty mentality. So, for instance, me advocating for you to have your guy's car washed would be seen as, oh, he can afford a car wash and this is nothing. And I too am a billionaire and I have a car. He knows my level. He knows what kind of car I drive. Is it because I borrowed this? You see, those kind of poor mindset will cost you quality relationships. Little gestures matters. In a world where everybody's trying to present a level of success and we associate success with arrogance. So saying thank you is discerned as as weakness or poverty. And your efforts might not be appreciated in the short run, but I guarantee you, if you are the kind of person who's always returning people's products in a better condition or the same condition, trying as much as possible to increase the value of every contributor in your life, helping people, putting good energy out there, it becomes impossible for you not to succeed. But I feel like we're diverging. Let's get back to the original point, which is pain. So your ability to become successful is relative to your pain tolerance. For the sake of time, we'll end it here. As always, my friends, it's a pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next one.